300 Spartans. One million Persians. A narrow pass between mountains and sea. This is the story you know from the movie 300. But what if I told you that almost everything you think you know about the Battle of Thermopylae is wrong? The Spartans didn't fight alone. The Persians didn't have 1 million soldiers. And most importantly, the reason they lost had nothing to do with being outnumbered. Today, we're uncovering the real reasons why Sparta's greatest warriors fell at Thermopylae, and the truth is far more shocking than Hollywood ever showed you. What's up, history warriors? If you've ever wondered what really happened at one of history's most legendary last stands, you're in the right place. Smash that like button, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at the Battle of Thermopylae the same way again. Let's dive into August 480 BC, where the fate of Western civilization hung in the balance. Picture this. Xerxes I, the King of Kings, ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen, is furious. 10 years earlier, his father Darius had sent an army to punish the Greeks for supporting a rebellion. That army was crushed at the Battle of Marathon by a force half its size. Now, Xerxes wanted revenge. But this wasn't just about payback. This was about dominance. He spent 4 years preparing the largest military expedition in ancient history. We're talking about building a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, digging a canal through a peninsula to move his fleet, and assembling an army so vast that ancient historians claimed it drank rivers dry. Now, let's get one thing straight right away. The movie 300 tells you Xerxes had 1 million soldiers. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus claimed the Persian force numbered over 2 million. But modern historians, after analyzing logistics, supply lines, and the physical space available, estimate the real number was between 70,000 to 300,000 troops. Still massive, still terrifying, but not the impossible numbers Hollywood threw at us. This matters because understanding the real numbers helps us understand why the Spartans made the decisions they did. When news reached Greece that this enormous Persian war machine was marching south, panic spread like wildfire. Most Greek city-states wanted to surrender immediately. Why fight the unstoppable? But Sparta and Athens, the two most powerful city-states, refused to bow. They formed an alliance and began planning their defense. The question was simple: where do you stop an army that size? The answer was a place called Thermopylae, which literally means hot gates, because of the thermal springs in the area. Thermopylae was perfect for defense. It was a narrow coastal pass, only about 15 meters wide at its narrowest point, squeezed between steep mountains and the sea. No matter how many soldiers Xerxes had, he could only send a few dozen through at a time. It was the ancient world's ultimate choke point. If you ever played a strategy game where you block an enemy at a narrow bridge, you understand the concept. The Greeks could use this terrain to neutralize Persia's numerical advantage. So King Leonidas of Sparta volunteered to lead the defense. Here's where the first myth gets shattered. Leonidas didn't take just 300 Spartans. He took 300 Spartan warriors. Yes, but they were accompanied by their hello servants who also fought, plus around 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, and contingents from other Greek cities. Ancient sources suggest the total Greek force was somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 men. Why does the myth focus on 300? Because those 300 were the elite Spartan warriors, members of the Hippies, the royal guard, and only they stayed for the final stand. But for the first 2 days of battle, they had plenty of backup. Now here's a critical detail most people miss. Leonidas only took 300 Spartans because of a religious festival called the Carneia, during which Spartans were forbidden from going to war. Additionally, the Olympic Games were happening, another sacred time when warfare was suspended. Leonidas technically defied Spartan law by even bringing these 300. He specifically chose only men who already had sons, so that if they died, their bloodlines would continue. This wasn't a suicide mission in his mind. It was a delaying action until the main Spartan army could arrive after the festivals ended. The battle began in early August, 480 BC. For 2 full days, the Greeks held the pass brilliantly. The Persian army crashed against the Greek phalanx like waves against a cliff. The phalanx formation, where heavily armored soldiers locked their shields together and presented a wall of bronze and spear points, was devastatingly effective in narrow spaces. The Persians, with their lighter armor and shorter spears, couldn't break through. Xerxes sent wave after wave of troops, including his elite immortals, the 10,000-strong bodyguard unit that was supposedly never depleted. They all failed. The Greeks didn't just hold, they slaughtered the Persian forces with minimal losses. Xerxes was reportedly furious, standing up from his throne 3 times in shock as he watched his army being destroyed by this tiny Greek force. The Spartans even used tactical retreats, pretending to flee, then wheeling around to attack the pursuing Persians who had broken formation. It was a masterclass in defensive warfare. Everything was going according to plan. The Greeks were winning. Then came the betrayal. A local Greek named Ephialtes, whose name would become synonymous with nightmare in Greek language, approached Xerxes with valuable information. There was a mountain path, the Thermopylae path, that wound around the mountains and came out behind the Greek position. It was barely known, difficult to traverse, but it existed. Xerxes immediately dispatched his general Hydarnes with the immortals to take this path under cover of darkness. Leonidas had actually anticipated this possibility. He had stationed 1,000 Phoenician Greeks to guard the mountain path. But here's where things went catastrophically wrong. When the immortals approached in the pre-dawn hours, the Phoenicians were caught completely off guard. Some historians suggest they were sleeping, others that they simply panicked when they realized the size of the force approaching. Instead of fighting to the death to hold the path, the Phoenicians retreated to higher ground to defend their own city-state's territory. They essentially abandoned their post. This single decision doomed the entire Greek force. By dawn of the 3rd day, Leonidas received word that the Persians were coming from behind. The trap was closing. He now faced an impossible choice. The entire Greek force could attempt to retreat and possibly be caught in the open and slaughtered, or they could stay and fight knowing it was suicide. Leonidas made a decision that would echo through history. He ordered most of the Greek allies to retreat immediately while they still had time. He kept only his 300 Spartans, the 700 Thespians who refused to leave, and the 400 Thebans, though sources suggest the Thebans were kept as hostages because their city-state's loyalty was questionable. Why did Leonidas stay? This is crucial to understanding Spartan culture. There was an oracle's prophecy that said Sparta would either lose a king or lose the city itself. Leonidas believed that his death could save Sparta. Additionally, Spartan law explicitly forbade retreat. To return home defeated was to return in disgrace. For a Spartan warrior, death in battle was the highest honor. But beyond honor and prophecy, there was cold military logic. If Leonidas and his men could hold the pass for even a few more hours, the retreating Greek forces would have time to escape and regroup. His sacrifice would buy time for Greece to prepare its next defense. The final battle was brutal and desperate. The Greeks abandoned the narrow pass and moved to a small hill where they could see enemies approaching from both sides. They fought with spears until their spears shattered, then with swords until their swords broke, then with their hands and teeth. Ancient accounts describe the hill becoming so slippery with blood that men couldn't keep their footing. Leonidas himself fell early in this final fight, and the battle partly became about recovering his body, with both sides fighting viciously over the Spartan king's corpse. When their weapons were gone and they were surrounded, the Persians finally finished them with arrows, shooting from a distance rather than engaging in close combat. The Spartans had fought so ferociously that even the elite immortals refused to face them hand to hand anymore. Every single Greek who remained was killed. The Thespians, whose sacrifice is often forgotten, fought just as bravely as the Spartans and deserved equal honor. So why did the Spartans really lose at Thermopylae? Let's break down the actual reasons. Because it wasn't simply being outnumbered. First and most importantly, the betrayal by Ephialtes was a game changer. Without knowledge of that mountain path, the Persians might never have broken through. The Greeks could have held that pass for weeks, long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The second reason was the failure of the Phocian guards. If those 1,000 men had held the mountain path for even one day, the entire battle would have turned out differently. Their retreat created the two-front situation that made the Greek position indefensible. Third, and this is fascinating, was timing and religion. If Leonidas had been able to bring Sparta's full army of 8,000 to 10,000 warriors, along with tens of thousands of allied troops, the battle would have been completely different. But sacred laws prevented it. The Spartans put their religious obligations above even existential military threats. This rigid adherence to tradition, while honorable, proved tactically disastrous. Fourth was a fundamental misunderstanding of Persian persistence. The Greeks thought that after 2 days of devastating losses, Xerxes might give up and withdraw. They didn't account for the fact that the Persian king had staked his entire reputation on this invasion. He would pay any price to win. But here's the twist that changes everything. While the Spartans lost the Battle of Thermopylae, they actually won the war this battle made possible. The 3-day delay gave Athens time to evacuate its entire population to the island of Salamis. It gave the Greek fleet time to position itself in the narrow strait where they could negate Persian numbers. 1 month after Thermopylae, the Greek navy destroyed the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. The following year, the remaining Persian army was crushed at the Battle of Plataea. Xerxes retreated back to Persia, his invasion a complete failure. The sacrifice at Thermopylae became the rallying cry that united Greece. It proved that Persians could bleed, that they could be beaten, that resistance wasn't futile. The Spartans lost 300 men but gained immortality. Their story inspired every Greek soldier who fought in the subsequent battles. When the Greeks finally drove the Persians out, they erected a stone monument at Thermopylae with one of history's most famous epitaphs, written by the poet Simonides. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. The truth behind 300 is somehow even more powerful than the myth. This wasn't the story of superhuman warriors with six-pack abs fighting cartoon monsters. It was real men, scared men, men who knew they were going to die, choosing to stand anyway. It was about imperfect humans making an impossible choice and accepting the consequences. It was about thespians who get no Hollywood movies but die just as bravely. It was about strategic sacrifice, about buying time with blood, about how sometimes losing a battle is the only way to win a war. The Spartans lost at Thermopylae because of betrayal, because of failed allies, because of bad timing, and because of impossible odds. But their loss taught the world something that echoes 2,500 years later. That courage isn't about winning, it's about standing, when standing seems pointless. That sometimes the most important battles are the ones you know you'll lose. That 3 days of defiance can change the course of human history. So the next time someone tells you about the 300 Spartans, you can tell them the real story. It's not about CGI abs and slow motion spear throws. It's about impossible choices, strategic sacrifice, and how a defeat became the greatest victory of ancient Greece. If this video changed how you see one of history's most famous battles, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. Drop a comment telling me which historical battle you want me to cover next. Until next time, History Warriors, stay curious and stay legendary.